When the simple hear shots, they always assume that they were aimed at someone. The heading of this item could have been another one of those along the lines of why it is so difficult to talk about this sort of thing with most people. Many who depart Paris so passionately for Istanbul never survive the doldrums of Belgrade. Men board the mystical express with near fanatical devotion to the destination, but midway in the journey, as their hormonal weight begins to settle, the great threat to the journey becomes the comfort and familiarity of their accustomed seat. At the outset, in the City of Lights, none stare, but soon all are in window seats, faces pressed to the glass, eyes glazed over, with but foggy memories of the grand urge that originally put them on the track. And yet, with the right effort, luck, and a good ticket, this transcendental train is a time machine, which one can board at age 20 and 40 years later be ageless. Examining herself in the mirror, Jesus' latest girlfriend noted, "After being around you, I'm no longer as concerned about sagging skin as I am about drooping awareness." One man discovered a fountain on his property. It seemed to run ceaselessly, and he could not determine its source. Men are given to say that though science provides today's necessary answers, it fails to address man's spiritual questions. But man has none, only a less than possible mental state. The reason, a poem, more or less. The reason that men don't want to see that life itself is alive is because then they'd be feasted with the money they've wasted in all of their human pursuits. It was discovered that one well-known mystic never stopped to meditate like others of his ilk, and someone surmised that he did it continually while on the run. One man introduced a whole new term which described his particular method to achieve awakening, and it met with such great interest that he is now trying to come up with an actual practice to go along with it. The reason the ordinary find the insane so interesting is that their thinking shows more signs of originality. Progress, real and imagined, a fable. On this one world, a day came when all of the animals gathered and decided that from then on they wanted to be led by the most caring, refined, and reflective among them, not the most brutish. On this one world, all the animals soon disappeared. Moral, if you must select which way to go, you don't know which way to go. As she swept under the bed, Confucius' girlfriend said, "I don't know why you make such a big deal out of it. All roaches look alike to me." Which is precisely el punto, thought he, without saying so. There are those who grease up their hand for certain physical autoerotic activities, while the true Buddhas of the mystical world do so mentally so as to get a better grip on another part of man's being. The simple, sensing their position, tend to the hostile. Furniture refinishing. After his return from the flying saucer, his wife said, "George, you're acting awfully strange." And he replied, "Well, it made me miss supper." The body can easily strip many layers of built-up mental paint. One man discovered a pack of rats on his property. They seemed to thrive effortlessly, and he could not determine their origin. After a time, storytellers began to think of themselves as philosophers, and philosophers of themselves as allegorists, and allegorists of themselves as mystics. And after a time, mystics began to wonder if anyone will ever come up with a beer that still tastes good after the third one. Nothing can be taken seriously if you don't think about it. The title of this item could have been The Easy Way Out. Genetic carpentry. Birth, a local partitioning. Mental birth, that is. The reason the ordinary admire and dislike science is not because of the technology it produces, but its attempt to use thought objectively. The danger of the past to the more conscious mind is its drive to permanentize that which could still be alive and flexible. One man discovered a source of fresh air on his property. Cliches, the banner years and automatic thought production. Cliches are the same as fleas are to fleas. Irrelevant, yet at the same time, a pleasant pox upon Poxville. I'll put it for you simply. The world is divided into two groups, those who know and those who don't. All other categories are irrelevant. In the roles of society, the mystical mind has none. Seeing himself in the mirror, a man thought, "You look like hell." Then added, "But looks aren't everything," and his reflection responded, "To me they are." The heading for this particular item could have been, "The Dual Life of Man as Normally Lived in the City." And they view facts as thus. I noticed that with some of your stories you put a title to it up front, while in other instances you wait until after it's been read to note what it might have been called. On several occasions I've sensed that this difference in approach represented something of possible significance. And at other times I figured it was all just meaningless. But then I began to wonder if there was some flaw in my own comprehension that made me even notice this distinction, much less imagine that it had any valuable implications. And yet, after listening to you for some time now, I've begun to seriously suspect that everything I experience has some potential message if I could but remember to look for it and not get all distracted. Yours sincerely. And the heading to that item could have been, "Uncertain viewer tentatively attempts to flag down tow truck on the apparent information super highway." It's almost impossible to have an original thought when you live in a fishnet. The full history of how mysticism ran amok. It began to take itself seriously. Life again, fully explained. The warts come with the hog, the sweetness with the honey. The awakening's sole purpose in being is itself. As soon as he was born, the child exclaimed, "Look, Daddy, we're riding a train," and the elder beamed at his instant comprehension. From last time, pick back up the example about how easy and oftentimes seemingly required and appropriate it is to look at man, ordinary man, as being insane, dumb, deranged, open to all sorts of reasonable, humane, intellectual, logical criticism. And I was using the one about the continual warfare going on between peoples going on today. 1994 was going on 1994 BC under guises that are less than comprehensible even to the most crude-minded. That is that they are fighting at some group. I was using the kind of non-specific example, although there is one going on currently, of what were erstwhile city-states that have broken up in the last few years and have emerged ethnic groups, as they're normally called, that is little neighborhoods and et cetera, that were not even recognized by most well-read people for the last 50 years. But now they're suddenly fighting at each other, and they always, of course, have a description as to what brought about this kind of conflict. I was going further and pointing out that in spite of all that we've already covered and that people have covered long before me, criticizing such groups, if we're taking an outside position that you have absolutely no genetic, no vested, no cultural, no imaginary interest in the conflict. You've never even heard of the people, you've got no relatives related to them, you're not part of any religious group that's connected there too, and you just look upon it as inexplicable to be charitable about it. And I pointed out that if you set the people down and you said, would you like to stop this? After they had already stated, well, what their reasons why, their grievances about the other party, and and we listened to both sides, and we set them down and said, well, do you want to stop? Do you have some particular enjoyment you're getting out of this bloodshed, not to killing the people that used to be your neighbors and et cetera? And they will say no. Then ordinary minds are left almost with a new level of potential criticism and judgment as to the overall nut-cittiness of humanity. How can they sit there and say they want to stop it and do not? Why do they keep going through? It even gets to be more entertaining, according to how you look at it, that the facade goes on, that not only will they say, well, yes, we want to stop, they'll decide, well, let's get together and even hold a peace conference. And you think, well, at least maybe they're getting somewhere. And then you ignore it, or they don't cover it on the front page of the news for a while, and 3 months later you read that they're bickering over what shape the conference, the peace table should take that they're going to meet. And oh no. In that meantime, you find that another approximately 2,200 children, unarmed civilians, housewives, grandmothers have been slaughtered while they were arguing over the size of the table or what shape it should take and who should sit on the left and who should sit on the right. You think this is crazy. Again, I could stop everything and grab these same people that are now arguing over something. You understand? I'm just trying to build all this up, and it happens constantly. I'm not making it up. You can't make up anything as good as life. Well, you can't. That's one reason that people try to become comedians. We've been through another version of that. But it's trying to make fun of life. You know why? Impotent self-defense. See, because life has got the big tongue. Life has got the whoopee cushion upon which we must all sit. And about the best humans can do is to sit on it and go, I meant to do that. Yeah. Just like you meant to get Groover syndrome and going to die. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I meant that. Even after it seems to have gone even further, that is, they spent 3 months while the bloodshed continues, and you find out that they have not even started a peace conference, that they are now flying back and forth here and there, sending out prime ministers and sub-prime ministers and subcontractors to prime ministers, trying to decide what size, what shape, what materials the peace table, the conference table should be made out of. And that's just further. I'm using ordinary logic. We're not using your opinion, or especially my opinion. I'm the one doing the talking right now. But it's not my opinion that they're nuts. I'm taking the ordinary feeling of what is sane, what is reasonable, what should be human approaches to anything by using humanity's own definition they're insane. They're absolutely crazy. Now back to what I said. We set them back down while they're in the midst of wrangling over, should it be made out of oak? Should it come from this part of the... And you say, listen, do you people want to stop this? I mean, are you actually getting some enjoyment? Is there something, you all look sane. If I didn't know about the conflict going on, by every other appearance and by everything I've heard, and some of you have written books, I've read articles you've written, all of you have graduate degrees, the heads of these two little factions. By every other observation, you are sane, reasonable, civil people. Yes? Then is there some real well-hidden, deranged flaw? Are you some kind of like undercover maniac? No. Would you like to stop this? Do you get some enjoyment in killing the children and the women and even the adult males that used to be your neighbors of this other faction? They go, no. And you ask the other side, do you get some enjoyment? No, I do not. So you're left with, well, what's wrong? I did point out again that there have been attempted explanations of this in the same way they attempted to explain why Adam and Eve insulted God, all the way up to the day of why a man says, listen, I worked my way up and became a billionaire and gave some money to charity, and how come I got cancer now? It's known as Job revisited, 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 revisited. The rediscovery of, fill in the blank, the continual rediscovery by the simple-minded of, you can start with examples like hard luck, bad luck, death. I'll tell you what it really is. Make this a parenthetical. But it's the simple-minded, it is the continual, forever rediscovery of, life. You're left with, back to almost an inexplicable situation. And about the best a person could say about the participants is that they are temporarily insane. Something is drastically wrong. Psychologists will attempt to come in and give some sort of explanation if asked and allowed to speak in adult company, not being laughed out of the room. Historians now engage in, and writers engage in whatever it is they're calling it, post-historical psychology, or of suddenly analyzing the mind of, I always like stuff like this, the mind of Napoleon. The mind of Julius Caesar. It's always nice to have a little humor in a serious discussion like this. Analyzing the mind, or the thinking, I should have put, the thinking of some political leader. Okay. That wasn't a complete joke, by the way. We're back to actually what I was going to point out. They have tried every explanation in the world. Some fly better than others. Some are chewed on for a while and then spit out and then they're recycled, as to why people continue to operate in ways that seem to be self-destructive, and if not directly self-destructive, that is, if you ask these two warring parties in my little conflict I made up, if you ask each of them, don't you think that this is going to destroy you? On the contrary, they would normally say, no, as a matter of fact, we're fighting to protect ourselves, because had we not, as unsavory as it may be, had we not began to defend ourselves and ended up in this conflict, we would probably now be extinct. But back to why no one can explain what's going on. And they cannot explain what's going on for the same reason that ordinary people cannot look directly at life. They say, and the reason I kept stressing it, and I'll just put it bluntly, as far as you can say what people believe they're up to, ordinary minds believe that they're up to, when I say that the participants would look you dead in the eye and sincerely and truthfully, as ordinary people would want to have it, if you said, would you like to stop the conflict? Yes. Well, are you getting any enjoyment, any pleasure out of killing your fellow man, no matter what complaints we've already heard that you registered against them. I'm not questioning that, but that notwithstanding, do you enjoy shedding the blood of your fellow man? No, I do not. Well, would you like to stop it? Yes. And you ask the other side, would you like to? Yes. And you think, well, why don't they? Skip all the attempted descriptions. They cannot stop it because of the fact they didn't start it. And they are not now running it. Life did it. That's it. Everywhere this side of reaching Istanbul on the great Oriental Mystical Express, that's it. That's this side of awakening. That's the stuff right in front of it to see the nature of life fully explained yet again. The warts come with the hog, the sweetness with the honey. But then look. All of human activity is then open to what appears to be reasonable, intelligent, progressive criticism. Not only that men fight, that seems to be well, it is, but even I'm saying it seems to them, but that is the most dangerous pitfall, pothole in the great ordinary road, highway of collective progress, of man being civil. Physical aggression, all the way from the individual level of not being safe from muggers to collectively one country, one group, one tribe, one religion not being safe from muggers of a different ethnic background, whatever excuse they have, whatever the story is. That is the linchpin in putting together civilization. That would be also fit in for those of you that I know I hear are plotting now to start your own religion based upon me pointing out that actually there's only one commandment. Only one commandment, need for religion or civilization. But it gets interpreted as thou shalt not kill. Don't do anybody physical harm. That is the basis of, it's the cornerstone of civilization. It's the cornerstone of being alive enough to be able to think and become, just at an ordinary level, an intellectual creature, a thinking creature. And so look, you've got a double-barreled pot of glue that first off, people will not stop killing one another. And those at the mechanical cutting edge of society, of evolution, they continue to point that out as the continuing proof that man is not yet civil. And they're correct in that. But then they keep thinking, well, we can cure it. We must cure it, yes, and how's that? And that's when they then have to engage in quite serious, hopefully with degrees to back it up, babble. Well, we'll do this, and it always affects behavior. It does not affect what is the cause, because they can't touch it. They can't even talk about it. But you have, back to my example, you have not only, here it is, these two groups of people and their leaders who seem to be, by every other observation and from every other measure, civil, decent, intelligent human beings, and yet they're engaged in continually killing one another, day in and day out. And they can't seem to stop. So you got the killing going on, this taking of human life. But then you've got the fact that they say they do not want to, and that they can't stop. And if you say, well, why can't you stop? And if you might care to notice, nobody is even this crude. Nobody, no outsider. They bring in the UN, or they bring in some apparent neutral party. They bring in somebody to try to arbitrate it. And they do a few things. Well, I'm stretching. I started to say that sometimes they even ask them, wouldn't you like to stop it? If you'll notice by all news reports, and if you don't have to limit it to that, you're safe taking my word for it, some great mediator, if they come in and sit down both sides, it will never even cross his or her mind to ask the people, like, would you like to stop this? They'd never ask anything that point blank, like, wouldn't you like to stop it? Think about that, if you need anything else to think about. But you have the parties continuing to engage in non-civil behavior. By any account, it doesn't take any particular political view, you don't have to be from some conservative or liberal position. There is no specific view required for killing, for physical aggression to appear correctly to ordinary minds to be unacceptable, because it tears at the very fabric of civilized life. It just cannot be abided past a certain point. It would tear everything apart. So you've got that. It's a given. No one argues that. And yet you take the very people engaged in it and you say, well, you know this is not correct. And they go, well, yeah. And we all know. It's everybody who always points, oh, the other guy hit me first. So and then you fall into the hands, if you go along with that and look, then you're a sitting duck to hear a psychologist or a sociologist or some social commentator then say something else. And all it is people looking around like a deranged possum out in the highway wondering what's going on. And suddenly you hear like a voice like, here, possum, possum. And you look up. And after that, you're done for. Remember, especially those of you that got on the train in the City of Lights on the way to Istanbul, you start off and nobody stares. You're so excited. And very shortly, though, you end up. Shortly, it may take you 20 years. And you're suddenly like that possum up against the glass window, staring. The train rocks along, and the hormones are wearing out, and you're getting older, and and I still don't seem like I'm wide awake or whatever enlightenment was. There's got to be more than that. And pretty soon it's just. But that's part of the life's arrangement is if you once listen to one story, if you listen from whatever source, you hear somebody go, here, possum, possum. You look. And after that, it's hard to quit looking because it's like you buy into one story. It's like they come around your door. Tell me I can't mix up metaphors and make them up. They knock on your door and you come out there and they're selling possum encyclopedias, one volume at a time. And you think, well, I don't want one. They go, oh, come on. They hypnotize you or they blow smoke in your face and it's got some kind of dope. And you go, well, and they say, just buy one. You don't even have to pay for it now. We'll bill you later. And then you can cancel. And you buy one? You buy one, you just about bought the whole damn set. Now, you can say you're not going to, and every now and then, some months you go, don't send me one. It's like, I'm finally pulling myself together. Like, I've heard enough of this bullshit from life. I'm not going back to that church, that synagogue, or I'm not going to read more philosophy books. I'm not going to think like that. Yeah. Right. And that's good for, who knows? Fill in the blank. It's according to how easy you are on yourself. That lasts for, 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 days. And those of you who are members of the Certified Liars Club, you can say 5 years. Don't Belgrade look nice at night when you're blind anyway? And plus, wait till we get somewhere really beautiful like Bulgaria. But consider, you have people still killing each other, and you ask them why, and they got a story. But then if you listen to the story is the same story over and over, and they can't even come right out and say what would be even close to the truth, which is simply a new version. It's a city version of jungle territorial disputes. That's all it is. But they can't even say that. But then if you ask them directly, still pointing out there is some use if you consider that no one even asked directly. But if you ask them directly, would you like to stop? Don't you disapprove of this? Forget the conflict. Forget the reason. I heard the reasons you gave me. I'm not questioning the reason. I understand what you said. Believe me, I understand that you had such and such. And they had a good story. Something to do with religious conflict, some past tragedy that had befallen one group and they attribute it to the other. Whatever it is, they've got a reason. And you can say, I understand your reason. I'm not going into that. But even taking that as a given, are you happy with the fact? Do you derive any pleasure, any satisfaction in killing these people and seeing their blood roll down the street every day and children accidentally shot every day? And they go, no. Both sides say no. Then you're left with, well, why the hell don't you stop? There is human progress intellectually brought right up to date. December 19th, whatever it is, 1994, I have brought it right up to date. Now it's a couple of seconds late, but it hadn't changed that much. I have brought it right up to date. But it's been up to that point. There are different levels I can put this, but it's been up to that point. I don't mean that I've done something great. It's been up to that point for at least 5,000 to 6,000 years. Did you understand which point? The point that they're not able to answer is the point. At least you missed the point. The point was not what I described. The point was that man has always been in the position. As soon as Adam and Eve learned to talk and made God mad, and he said, "Get out of here," they walked out, and after that, they began to talk. But after that, they could not answer what the hell was going on. See, that's the trick. That's where the exit gate to Eden was, which is where the line is in the nervous system and the brain between the verbal and the nonverbal. Then once you get in, before you pass the gate to be verbal, there's nothing to answer. Because my little jokes every now and then are pointing out that you cannot go up to Hippo and go, "How the hell did you get so fat?" Not only can you not make it feel guilty, you can't make it answer, right? Or look at a cat and go, "You think you're something, don't you?" that kind of attitude you got. And the cat look at you, well, you know, you can't do it. A human, there was nothing to answer. Assuming that to make the example a little plainer, if humans were indeed carnivores before they could speak, then when a human killed some animal and ate it, you couldn't go up to a human and say, don't you realize you could probably develop into an omnivore, or you didn't have to kill an animal to eat it? Shame on you. That animal probably had children. I'm trying to do a reasonable look of an intelligent human pre-verbal. But come to think about it, it's not bad for some post-verbal. Before you exit Eden, before you exit the silent paradise, you cannot answer anything. There is no need to answer. You cannot be enticed to answer. If you said, "Why do you kill animals?" You killed an animal bigger. You couldn't possibly eat an elephant. Why did you kill why did you kill something smaller? And you saw the elephant had a family with it. Why did you do that? Same as a lion. Once you pass the gate and you begin to speak, then, and only then, are you subject to being questioned, being interviewed, which is what it represented with God, and take the Western story of him saying, of course, they had a specific as always. "Why did you eat that food when I told you not to?" That wasn't it. It was that Adam stood still for a damn interview. If you'll entertain a question, you've been had. You have picked up the soap, whether you thought you were in the Greek Navy or not. God said, "Look at there's a quarter," and you bent over. Well, hey. He recognized a greedy creature when he saw one. Once man can speak, then he has to answer. An ordinary man does. And not to answer is not acceptable at the ordinary level. And I've gone through examples of the different variations of the hero dying story, refusing to answer. And it's opened all kinds of crude interpretations, but the simple interpretation is that kind of answer is destructive to the person. And to take it further than that, it becomes religious, it becomes mythological, it becomes whoever died, whoever actually did that, if they did, it becomes his followers then having to beef up the story and jazz it up to sell it better. But he did it for one reason, not to help people, not for any sort of allegorical message. He did it for a reason, his reason. But everybody else you are subject to. It's damn near impossible not to sit for an interview. Therefore, but then it seems to be specific. At least you thought that was too much of a en passant or irrelevant note when I said that in all the stories, like the gods say, "What'd you do that for?" But a specific thing. "Why'd you eat that fruit? I told you not to." That is irrelevant. That is, again, like here, possum, look over here. and you look, you know, boy, isn't Belgrade beautiful? Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But you end up staring only at Belgrade. God says, why did you eat that fruit? And now you've got people today, to take that story literally, as it is taken, you've got people today who will insist that they are still suffering, that they do have Gruber syndrome and their big toe swells up a lot when it rains. And there's no doubt about it. As decent as they are and as faithful as they are to their little church, we're paying off that damn debt. We're paying off a debt from however long ago it was. For that specific reason that Adam ate that fruit and God told him. He said, you can do anything you want to, but don't do that. When you deal in specifics, you're stuck with specifics. When the mind thinks that there are specific examples that have some significance in life, you're stuck with them. And that's the same thing as if you let life say, well, why are you doing this? And you go, well, that's a decent question. No, it's not. That's a damn fish hook. That's the plate glass on the train. And now your hormones are beginning to settle. You've been bouncing along on the way to Paris, from Paris to Istanbul, and it's however many years it takes you, 20 or 30, and now you're getting well into the Adriatic area, into Belgrade, and suddenly, so it seems, you're hypnotized. You're up against the glass. And the glass itself can keep, whenever necessary, go, here, possum, possum. Just in case you kind of try to look off. If you answer a question, you'll answer any question. And if you answer a question, there is no answer. And if you'll entertain the question, there is no sane response. Back to the point, you ask the people, how can you be civil? How can this be the 20th century? How can you, in every other respect, seem to be sane, intelligent, reasonable people? And you're killing each other, you know. And on top of that, I've got you here in private, and I'm asking you, would you like to stop it? And here's the two prime ministers. Maybe they're in different rooms, and you say, you're crying. Right now you tell me, yeah. And I'm going to tell you the truth. The prime minister of so-and-so, I was over there just 5 minutes ago. He sat there and cried too. And he says, yes, he would love to stop it. And now you stand. You go back. You, now representing a reasonably intelligent, ordinary mind. And you're standing there in the hallway between these two rooms, the two prime ministers. What conclusion can you come to? Using the colloquial, it's just that, well, humanity in some ways deranged. And yet when you're standing there talking to the people, they seem as intelligent, they seem as humane, they seem as caring as you were. Using you again as a reasonable, middle-of-the-road, sane, civilized person. And you're in there with people who are in charge, or who are charged with the responsibility of engaging in absolutely inhumane acts. Inhumane. And they agree, yes. And you go, why don't you stop? Which, one more time, nobody ever asked them that. Now, if you've listened to all news reports or read history, of course, history doesn't count a lot. You guys should know by now because you can change it. But even history, I know that it seems like you'll get reports that, or even today, let's skip history, there'll be reports going today that there's some peace initiative going on and somebody's talking to this side and this side, and they'll interview the would-be mediator, and they'll say, well, how's things going? You just got back from talking to this guy. We're in that room. He'll go, well, and it sounds as though he's saying like we're making progress. I ask him, you know, can't we reconcile some of this? But notice this, they never. The interviewer doesn't ask the mediator never asks them. The mediator never says, well, I'm getting a little discouraged or I'm getting encouraged, because he'll never say, or they say, well, what did you talk about on this first day, or the 10th day, or the 1,000th day? But the first day would be the more appropriate, sequentially sounding time. You say, well, what did you talk about? And here it is, a man known to be humane, damn near a saint, won the Nobel Peace Prize several times already. You can just look at him. He looks like the poster boy on a vernacular stamp. Fill in your own correct avuncular then. Humor is a tricky thing. But tricky things can also be humorous, so it works out. If they say, well, you met with them the first time today, you've flown back from here to this side of the hallway, and you've spoken to both of them, what did you talk about? Can you at least tell us, not the details, but what was the opening round of conversations? You'll never hear the man go, I asked them, why don't they stop? Well, no, I'd ask them first they want to. And they both went, yeah. And? Well, I don't know, they can't seem to. Did you ask them why? Well, yeah, I did. And? You understand? All of that rhetorically. Me using contemporary events, real events. I'm not making any of this up. It all makes rhetorical sense that it's not unusual when I say it that a mediator could come out and say, well, I asked them, do you people want to stop this? And they both went, yeah, yeah. And I said, well, why don't you? It never happens. Why does it not happen? Why is all of man's activities, even when in the arena that seems to be otherwise civil, sophisticated, humane, decent, that they can continue to engage in activities that are inhumane, uncivil, etc. Not only they cannot say they can't stop, but they can't say why they don't stop. Plus, they're not asked. I can't resist throwing that in one more time, because that's always. It's not that people just can't look in mirrors. People don't even think to look in mirrors. I knew that wouldn't work because all of you think that you've heard before, like Socrates, and attributing to the muses and etc., saying, well, the unexamined life is not worth living. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't know what to examine, which is what I meant. It's not that people can't look in mirrors. They don't know what a mirror looks like. Does that help? You have to take allegories and allusions further and further away from this planet for them to have the desired effect. And sometimes you can get so far out of orbit that people go, what effect? What effect? The reason, let's go back and make it very plainly, very plain. If you take my picture, which you, all of you, I assume, know is going on right now and is always going on, of two otherwise apparently sane, civilized, decent groups of people, and they're killing each other for whatever the apparent reason, whatever their proclaimed reason, that you surely hear me that if you took them in private and asked them, would you like to stop this? Is there some enjoyment you're getting? Wouldn't you like to stop? And they go, yes. And if you say, well, why can't you? What can they answer? Nothing. They cannot answer it is why the question can't be asked. That's why no one, quote, ever thinks to ask it. Life does not drive itself crazy like some of you do. Life does not sit around and ask itself unanswerable questions. It does not ponder the imponderable. Life internally does not give itself a rash. So therefore, life does not let men. That's why I kept saying, do you realize that people that no one ever thought to go into these two belligerents and say, why don't you stop? Don't you want to? They go, yeah. And they go, why don't you? The reason that that can't be asked is because there's no answer. Oh, there's an answer, all right, but life doesn't want you to hear it. It would be self-defeating. And so therefore, I mean, it's a simple way, like, this is not what goes on, of course, but from a three-dimensional level, it can apparently make sense. It would be like this, which is not, but it could be like this. It's like there's some answers that life simply does not want people to know right now, okay? What's the best way to keep them from knowing these answers? What would be the most efficient way? Is don't let it ever cross their mind to ask the damn question. You understand? Therefore, it's, well, think about the problem. If life was afraid that people might order something from this mail order catalog that could be, some kind of secret information that could be detrimental, then life has got to watch to make sure that these packages don't actually leave that particular catalog sales, and they got to trace where they're going, make sure the packages get lost or something. I got an easier way. Don't let them order. You understand? Then they don't have to worry about whether the shipments are actually going to get here. Just don't let them order. Just like they don't even know it exists. There is why the questions are not asked. That's not the reason, but that's the explanation, verbally. People do not ask it. But it's quite simple. It couldn't be simpler. You ask them, and of course, all of you should be doing it yourself. Ask yourself so that you realize I'm not making up something. You're not listening to somebody's theory. You're just listening to an absolutely unexpected shadow boxing, if not shadow plays with what's going on in life. As you ask these same people, wouldn't you like to stop? And you know the answer is yes, because we already covered, I'll remind you again, we're not talking about anything on the fringes of the healthy heart of humanity. Because we all know in any area of the world, whether they're engaged in conflict or not, but to take my picturization of these two groups engaged in conflict, there's some people over there, some fringe elements, some people enjoying it. If they weren't doing that, they'd be bopping each other on the head and mugging each other. We're not talking about that. We're talking about like the prime ministers, the heads of state, the heads of their local churches, and et cetera. If you ask them, do you want to stop this? Yes. Do you find this horrible and despicable? Yes. And they cry. Yes, I cannot stand it. Don't show me more pictures. I know what we're doing. And you say, well, why the hell don't you stop? Which nobody asked them that. But why the hell don't you stop? And you should feel it. They would say, well, yeah, I want to. And you say, well, why don't you stop? Now feel it up here. Not in your heart, not in your soul. Right here is where it's all taking place. Because if we couldn't talk, they wouldn't even be asking questions, remember. That's why I went through that. You'd simply be animals. They'd be killing each other. Nobody ever say, what'd you do that for? And again, the lion goes, why did you kill that poor little gazelle? There is no question, there is no answer. But humans, you say, why can't you not stop? You say you want to, why can't you? The answer is easy. I say easy, that's almost makes me allegorically throw up to even say it's easy. Everyone else ponders, looks, thinks, speculate, they debate, goes through large cycles, psychologically, sociologically, political theories come and go. Why do people do this? Here's the answer. Well, I'll show you where the answer is before I tell you the answer, which you already know, but here's where you look. You go, I'm assuming it's the questions over here. Like, how are these people doing that? For those of you that if that was too much, and let's try it. They're over here having the conflict. Here's where to look for the answer. There it is. Do you want to stop doing this? Yes, we do. Well, then why don't you? Which again, remember, nobody can even ask the question. Then why don't you? But if you could, you know what the answer is. Still, using my picturization of these otherwise sane, reasonable people, they would say, and this won't happen, but you can surely picture the validity. They would say, I'll be goddamned, I don't know. But that's almost unbearable. Literally. To take a sane person, an otherwise sane person, and present him to something. And remember, I'm not presenting any political attitude. This is no position. I'm using their position of what is sane and what is reasonable. They say this is absolutely unreasonable. This is inhumane. This is uncivil. This is just despicable. Of you killing civilians, children. They go, yeah, it is. It's horrible. Well, surely you want to stop. You know we do. Well, why don't you? That's unbearable. Why don't you? It's quite simple. Why don't you stop? The answer is, well, I didn't start it. No. Not the guy across the hall. I didn't start this. Life started this. Life's running this. What good does that do an ordinary person? Life again, fully explained. The warts and the bullets come with the hog. The sweetness and the bullets come with the honey. Case closed. Except ordinary minds go, no. Wait a minute. Wait. No, wait. Nope. There's no nope. There's simply blunt. There.
Yeah.
every definition, every criticism made of man, and I repeat to remind you, we're not using mine. I'm not saying it's true. I'm using any view. I'm just using a cross-section historically of the civilized view of certain aspects, continuing aspects of human behavior, in this case, physical aggression, destruction, war, conflicts. On that basis, every civilized observer, historian, writer, person right now, everyday person, finds it to be absolutely unacceptable behavior, as they should, as they must, and they do. Then, on that basis, properly so, man is subject to criticism. Not in some cheap form and pushed right to the front of life's general parade, even apparently from more than just a personalized, subjective, parochial view. That is, that there's something wrong, even if you don't know why these two groups are fighting. Even if they just show you photographs and say, right now, in a part of the world, look at this. And they show civilians and children and people laying in the street dead, and they don't tell you anything else. And they go, without me telling you who this is or what they think the conflict is. It could be religious, economic, territorial, whatever it is. Do you find that acceptable? And a sane person, a civilized person now will go, no. And you go, now you understand, they may have a great argument on each side. And assuming you're just reasonably civilized now, you'd go, well, I know that. I'm familiar. All throughout history. They always have. You understand that you would just prima facie, when you heard about it or saw a photograph, and you said, do you find that behavior acceptable? Forget the reasons that they give. You go, no. Then the question is, and they're totally abstract as far as the mind can go, you go, well, how can you explain humans doing this? That you're saying it's unacceptable, whatever the reason, and yet they're doing it. I'm telling you, this photograph was made 10 hours ago. And this is just one of thousands we have over the last 2 months. And you go, well, it's inexplicable. It's not inexplicable. It's totally explicable. For most minds, it be too explicable. Get that splick away from me. I'm using my mind. I don't need to be that splicked. And I know you don't. But look at what all forms of criticism are, no matter how apparently deserved, no matter how civil, no matter how intelligent, such as I just was trying to describe, that a person would look without knowing any details and say that behavior, whatever, there is no excuse for that. That is, in other words, they would find their attitude to be a proper criticism of human behavior without knowing any details. It's just that is unacceptable. So after that, then if you filled in the details, they would try, or they would have to be more specific in their criticism. If you start thinking, well, what the two groups are, what their religions are, what their nationality, whatever it is, you would then begin to, your mind could not help it, would begin to select the form of criticism that you deem proper. But it would still be on the basis they're crazy, they're religious fanatics, it's the rich against the poor, those people have had it too easy, these people have been downtrodden, there'll be an excuse, there'll be a reason. I'm going to give you the one, the unspeakable. It's a nice, decent word. You don't have to bleep it. Children can hear it. I'm going to give you the indecent, unacceptable word to explain. It is the basis. It is the reality behind all forms of criticism aimed at from one human to another. That is, that you're deranged, you're a fanatic, you're crazy. But again, I'm using not crazy. We're not talking about the fringe. We're talking about the otherwise sane people. Say your behavior. This one guy on this one civilized side of the hall, when you talk to him and you say the prime minister of the other faction, he says he wants to quit just like you do. But neither one of you will. They will even amongst themselves, knowing it's not literally true, they go, well, his behavior is absolutely, it verges on insane. Oh, I know him. I went to school with him before all this started. But how can he do this? All right, all the way from insane, well, that about covers it. That is about, from a civilized view, the ultimate insult amongst what apparently are equally civilized people. Now remember, we're talking about what appear to be equally civilized, not some rebirth of Attila coming in attacking Amsterdam, Copenhagen, some But we're talking about what appears to be equal to civilized people. There can only appear to be some form of insanity, and even from an outside observer, for you hearing this kind of thing, and why won't they stop it? How can they do this? It is absolutely insane. They're nuts. I mean, it's some kind of temporary insanity, and yet you hear them interviewed, and apparently it's not. And so all you can do is just kind of forget about it. The reality behind the reality behind everything that humans do that provokes the criticism, one person to another, that you are in some way less than a fully civilized, intelligent human being, is one thing. I can give you the one word. It's indecent. People don't, it won't mean anything to ordinary people. And some of you may have to write it down and go, or think, did I actually hear that? The operational reality behind all forms of criticism has one thing, it can be summed up in the one word, having to do with man, of course, we're talking about man, is his helplessness. There's a beautiful justice involved. Ordinary minds can never hear that. Never, 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 even though periodically there'll be a flash, there'll be a book, there'll be some philosopher throughout history, there'll be some guy standing on a street corner and say something similar to that verbally, and 10 or 12 people going by, or 10 or 1,200 going by will go, whoa, wait a minute, wait, I got to think about that. And they'll think for about 2 seconds and go, what time does that second show start? And that's it. The justice is ordinary people, to hear they're helpless, cannot hear it. But the other justice is that those that would be more conscious eventually hear it, and it does not mean a damn thing anymore. Other than this, you realize, aha, so that's been it. Then you can do something about it. Then you can get up and at least begin to walk around your car and maybe up and down the aisle of the train. And everybody else is sitting there staring out the window, dreaming. And it's not theory, because you know that, wait a minute, there, but for the grace of being shook by some deranged conductor, still said I. Or as I put it, luck and a good ticket, and a certain kind of effort. But the first two seem to hold more promise if you don't know the truth. Because the making personal effort is almost as unpredictable and problematic as luck. Don't forget, the name of this show is Believe It or Give Yourself a Break and Don't.